I start each day by thanking the white man for the sunrise, for the land I walk on, for the air I breathe. I also apologize for, but Lord knows they ain't gonna apologize for themselves.
What does K.Bad3noch, Priti Patel, James Cleverly, and Nadeem Sawahi all have in common? And it is not being Tories. Let's take a look.
Break it down!
So, have you guessed it yet? What they all have in common is they're all collaborators, cultural apostates, or if you like, snakes in the grass.
Don't touch them new over there.
By assisting this government in furthering their obsession with a culture war.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Security. We got a cold black. Cold black at the main gate.
Which is a deliberate attempt to deflect away from the racism within their own party.
The Conservative Party has also been accused of racism.
Basically, a dead cat on the table.
To work, we need to subject you to extreme stress.
Thank you. You have something in your teeth.
Also, their handling of the economy since or pre-COVID-19 and the massive deficit that has not been reduced. The laundering of public money.
You look at these companies who have got coronavirus contracts, not even delivering the products or the services which they're being paid to deliver. And some of them, as Tory donors, might have given a few tens of thousands to the government. They are reaping hundreds of millions of pounds in untendered contracts from that same government.
Throughout this pandemic, let alone the handling or the thousands of deaths. Also, the inevitable consequences of a Brexit deal that is likely to put this country back 20 years. So plenty of stuff for this government would not like the general public to be discussing amongst themselves.
Oh, right. So that's that Councillor Murray, is it?
Hence why rolling out these figures at this time is significant.
Remind him, since he mentions the Home Secretary, that she is keeping this country safe by putting in record numbers of police officers. She believes in stopping the early release of offenders, and she's bringing in a system to tackle our migration crisis with an Australian-style points-based system.
Now, the trust they are gleaning is not that of the tokenism you usually suspect or how it's usually deployed.
You see, Token, people really enjoy seeing African Americans on the news. Seeing African Americans on the news, not hearing them.
As it's an appeal to the Conservatives' anti-racism purity.
We're the first party to have appointed an ethnic minority Chancellor of the Exchequer and the second ethnic minority Chancellor of the Exchequer. We were the first party to appoint an ethnic minority Home Secretary.
Which is just a figure of speech because the Conservative Party is innately racist.
Oh, well, we have a black person here, in our neighborhood, so we're cool, we're all right. That doesn't wash anymore.
Whether the people who vote for them wish or want to accept that or not.
You can't handle the truth.
Now, these collaborators prop up the existing systems and only wish to further and deepen its systems of discrimination and marginalisation.
I think you would have to insist that they call you sir. You cannot have the boss and the employees on first name terms. Otherwise, they think you are equal.
Their privilege serves them and not the communities their tokenism represents.
In the Gambia, in order to be a successful businessman like myself, one really must be of respectable age and stature. Do you see?
Dominic Cummings, Bojo's right-hand man or previous right-hand man, said in a news conference or in a conference,
what's one of the core problems of the Tory party brand going back decades? NHS, and people think, by the way, and I think most people are right, the Tory party is run by people who basically don't care about people like me.
Somewhat validating the public's concerns about the Tories, claiming
the public is basically correct. Tory MPs largely do not care about these poor people.
We're told unemployment is at its lowest level in years,
although we met a lot of people who thought differently.
Now, just a week ago, K.Bad3noch was accused of breaking the ministerial code by retweeting a screenshot of a journalist's comments.
The Minister of Equality, no less, K.Bad3noch, who publicly criticised HuffPost journalist Nadine White by publishing on Twitter her legitimate private queries to her department about low vaccine take-up in black communities, and then describing those questions as creepy and bizarre.
This whole ordeal has left me feeling humiliated, stressed and deeply concerned about the standards of behaviour that is deemed as acceptable from within the government.
On a video published and including a cross-party group of BME MPs.
MPs don't agree all the time, but on taking the vaccination issue we do.
Has really turned our world upside down and taken far too many of our loved ones.
We understand the fears, the anxieties and the confusion.
Please, please, please take it.
That was intended to get more vaccine take-up within especially, but not exclusively, the black community and other ethnic groups.
If it gets to my turn, I certainly will be taking it.
The Prime Minister's diversity advisor also resigned the other week.
Samuel Kasumu, here with Michael Gove, campaigning for Vote Leave, who said in his resignation letter he wanted to leave because he feared the Conservatives were now pursuing a politics steeped in division.
But then retracted his resignation. In a letter, Dr. Kasumu, or Mr. Kasumu, accused the Conservative Party of pursuing a politics steeped in division. He suggested Equalities Minister K.Bad3noch may have broken a ministerial code.
You drink while you work?
And also, if you remember back in the summer, in June, a report by Public England suggested racism could be contributing to the increased risk to black, Asian and minority communities who are catching and dying from COVID-19 disproportionately.
That the increased risk for black and Asian people is not attributable to a higher prevalence of other medical problems or deprivation among black and Asian groups. So that means that we have an outstanding mystery, if you like.
The report into racial inequality in the UK, ordered by Boris Johnson.
We're still waiting for a report from the Conservative Party into prejudice. It was announced last year. When are we going to see that?
Will not now be completed until this month or later this month, when it was supposed to be completed last year.
You're right.
The department looking into the areas such as health, education, criminal justice and the wider inequalities granted the person heading this, Mr. Sewell.
It's like there are disparities. I think there are disparities based on race, but they're not necessarily caused by racism. And that.
You're right.
An inquiry request for a 2-month extension until the end of this month. But Equalities Minister K.Bad3noch said she was pleased by the Commission's work and the ministers believed in an evidence-led approach.
I have, as we say, embroidered the truth.
To tackling of all discrimination, such as issues all faced by working class white boys, not just box ticking. Now, our working class white boys are suddenly a minority.
There's just no end goal. There's no end point. There's no path.
We are focused on implementing what actually works and avoiding passing fads, she tweeted.
And we tell people what they want to know.
Also as well, in the summer or at the beginning of the pandemic, SNP MP Alison Furless.
It's one thing to say that Black Lives Matter and quite another to force black people and people from BAME backgrounds out to work because they have no choice other than to go to work because they have no recourse to public funds. No recourse to public funds is a racist policy. Will she abolish it now?
Forcing black people to work was a racist policy after the government's eventual retraction of making foreign nurses pay the surcharge was rejected by Ms. Bad3noch.
It is absolutely wrong to try and conflate lots of different issues and merge them into one just so that it can get traction in the press. And I go back to what I said in my original statement. It is not right for us to use confected outrage. We need courage to say the right things.
As you can see here, I enjoy building small shrines to certain special white people who are important in my life.
This was before the government decided to U-turn though. So, with all that being said, what work has already been done on racial inequality in the UK so far?
Not a damn thing!
The race disparity audit published by former Prime Minister Theresa May in 2017 showed inequalities between ethnicities in educational attainment, health, employment, and treatment by the police and the courts.
What's wrong with street justice?
Oh, just let the animals wipe themselves out.
God willing. Fuck them. Everybody who looks like them.
Also in 2017, the Lammy report found evidence of bias, discrimination against people from ethnic minority backgrounds in the justice system in England and Wales. Also in 2017, again, the McGregor-Smith review of race in the workplace found people from black, minority, ethnic backgrounds were still disadvantaged at work and face lower employment rates than their white counterparts. And also, an independent review of the Windrush scandal published in March found the Home Office showed institutional ignorance and thoughtlessness towards the issue of race. So, clearly, many examples of systematic racism that is not being dealt with by the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
It's not exclusively the Conservative Party. All political parties are guilty of this, but the Conservatives do a good job, if not excel, at doing this across the board. So, for example, working class traitors. Using ministers who come from working class backgrounds to justify why the welfare state is bad.
Let's not pretend this is some operation to sort of, do down the hardest in society. The whole idea around universal credit is it's a poverty-fighting tool, and we've got to get the implementation of it right.
Blaming indigenous working people's reduction in job security and progress by blaming those immigrants over there. Yeah. Working class white boys doing poorly is another one.
The plight of white working class boys still seems to be an unfashionable one, Mr. Speaker, but these young men have some of the worst life chances of any group anywhere in our country. But the Equalities Act doesn't touch on socio-economic disparity or poverty, and it seems like every other group in society has some kind of positive action in place apart from these boys. So what can my honourable friend do to ensure that this is the last generation of lost boys?
Used as a way to deflect from the problems faced by those minorities in other racial groups. Women equality. Using the tagline, we have had 2 female prime ministers, while still minimising the existing and overarching discrimination women perceive today.
This is the toxic atmosphere of politics at the moment. There are so many barriers that women have in terms of coming forward, and a lot of it is actually the way that we approach these types of jobs. We like to think that we must be qualified or overqualified before we go for them. Men don't, and if you look at how long it takes, it typically takes a woman about 2 years to make the decision to do it. With the men, I say it's about 48 hours to a week.
Non-white discrimination, yeah? Dismiss the causal effects of racism as just victimization.
We march up and down the street. We vote. Carry on. In grace.
And reject or refuse to stand with their whatever struggle they may have.
Quite frankly, I didn't support that attempt to rewrite history. I felt that was wrong.
And you didn't agree with taking the knee per se at all?
No.
The LGBTQ community wheeling out their white privileged gay men who voted Tory as a way to say, this is progress, guys.
I love the sort of presentation of the LGBT community as if like the gays and the lesbians never meet. They have nothing to say to each other. And
yeah, but we should not be surprised by this at all, as the Conservative Party will and has always been, since its inception in the 19th century, from the days of Sir Robert Peel, who founded the Metropolitan Police, and William Gladstone, whose ancestors owned slaves,
Conservatism attracted predominantly the aristocracy and the landed gentry. These are the people who held a lot of property under the old regime. Buzzwords here: tradition, institutions, privileges. All right, these are people who really defended the old regime and saw some value here. And
resources out of India and then later Africa.
The British have been in India for over 200 years.
Because that unequal exchange can be easily discerned from this condition. And by that, what I mean is the economic influence of the former colonial powers still remains there.
De Beers, the world's largest diamond miner, founded in South Africa back in 1888 by Cecil Rhodes, the British pioneer who also founded Rhodesia, now modern-day Zimbabwe.
You're looking at the world's richest diamond mine right here in the Kalahari Desert of central Botswana. This really is the crown jewel in the De Beers empire.
It played a huge role in subverting the old regime and its cadre of government sympathizers who were aligned with the former colonializers.
We are worried about you, Matthew. You have entrusted your business to these West Indians. How do you know we can trust them? Do you see?
They were part of the native elite who were educated and trained by the colonializers, and their interests were usually at a divergence from the native people.
It is gratifying to see West Indians acknowledging their roots. Wonderful African craftsmanship, do you see?
These were the very people the former colonializers were now using to exploit the native people of both India and Africa. Now, we should never forget this. But society only allows two roles: the torturer
the fear of ye and the dread of ye,
and the tortured.
Come on, girlie. Come on.
And this twists people into joyless mannequins that fear and hate, while society or culture plunges into the abyss.
Break it down.